This video is supported by pixels.com, your only source of royalty-free stock footage. Click on the link in the description to find out more. I am sure you have seen a version of this picture somewhere on the internet, showing this guy seemingly looking stupid for charging his electric vehicle using power produced from a coal or a fossil fuel powered power plant. Well, I'm about to blow your mind and tell you that using electricity from a fossil fuel fired power plant is actually more efficient and more environmentally friendly than actually taking the fuel, putting it in an internal combustion engine vehicle and driving using that energy. This is the African scientist. I made a whole video about electric vehicles. If you'd like to know more about them, I'll have it linked on the pop-up banner. So first, let me get this out of the way. Not everyone in Africa can afford a vehicle, of course. However, this video is going to be on the internet forever, and therefore I hope that this video can inform some decisions that you or someone you know would make in the future. At the end of the day, the best choice for Africa is to invest in high quality, cheap, preferably even free public transportation. The buses, the electric trains, the subways. The more of this we have and the more of our population that we can transport using renewable electricity, the better and cleaner our cities and our countries can be. Now, let me tell you why many people misunderstand this picture. When most people think of fueling a car, they only account for what happens after the fuel is already in the car. But clearly, the journey that petroleum products take from their mining to the moment they are burnt inside an internal combustion engine is much longer and much more complex than this. 1. Mining and transportation of fossil fuels. I know we all know where petroleum products come from, right? They are mined from the ground or from the ocean. They are formed through millions of years of dead organic matter being compressed under pressure inside the earth. And yes, I know it's not dino juice. I saw someone on the comment arguing with me one time. It's not. Actually, majority of the fossil fuels that we use on earth right now are made up of the algae and the early plant life that existed on planet Earth millions of years ago, as this research here suggests. Mining of petroleum is an environmentally dirty process. The whole process from breaking into the ground through processes like fracking, injection of deadly substances under pressure inside the earth to crack open rocks in order for the extraction of the fossil fuels, the wastage and the spillage of unrefined crude oil on pristine ecosystems around the world. I saw the other day a city in Nigeria that has literal black soot falling on every surface because of illegal refinery of petroleum products. I am actually going to make a video about this very soon. The process of mining petroleum is an extremely dirty and energy intensive process. On the other hand, the process of making electricity is mostly clean. Now, I know everyone is going to talk about the cobalt mining happening in Central Africa and how it has led to the exploitation of the populations in Congo specifically. Oh, and if you didn't know, cobalt is this magical metal that is now being used in making batteries and in making many other electronic gadgets, and is mainly mined in Central Africa and has caused a huge humanitarian crisis in the region because the mines lack humane conditions. And yes, I agree, this is a big problem that needs solutions today. I saw a video recently made by one of the best YouTubers ever, Johnny Harris, that I will leave linked in the description, that gave a good explanation of the problems happening with the cobalt mines in Central Africa, including many of them being owned by China. However, there's hope in this whole situation because most of the cobalt that was initially being used to manufacture lithium-ion batteries is now being replaced by newer technologies like the lithium ion with an R, and the lithium phosphate technologies that are much better, much cleaner for the environment, and even easier to recycle. Speaking of recycling, when we obtain crude oil from the ground, we burn it and turn it into CO2 that we thereafter pump into the atmosphere. While when we obtain lithium and other rare elements from the ground and make batteries for electric transportation, when they reach their end of life and they do reach their end of life after many years of use. Tesla or Toyota, for example, gives nearly 10 years life warranty on their batteries. They can be easily recycled, and the elements that were used to make them can be used to make newer batteries or other stuff. Let's talk about efficiency. The most efficient internal combustion engine that has been made so far is just around 30% efficient. Where does all that other energy go to? More than 75% of the energy produced from an internal combustion engine in a vehicle is just wasted as heat. It's just thrown out into the atmosphere. It's crazy. Imagine this. This is crazy. 70% of the fuel that you put into your engine in the car is just wasted as heat. It is not used to move you. It is just waste heat. That just is crazy. In comparison, electric transportation, electric vehicles have extremely high efficiencies, with batteries having efficiencies of higher 90s. Electric motors are not 100% efficient, but they are almost 98% efficient in their use of energy, meaning that when you charge an electric vehicle to full, you use nearly 95% of the energy stored in the battery to move your vehicle. Think about that for a moment. Talking of efficiency also, when designing an internal combustion engine for a vehicle, there are size constraints. The engine literally has to fit within this small space at the front of a vehicle, meaning that the engine can only be so big. However, when designing an internal combustion engine for a power plant, there are no size constraints. It can be as large as possible, meaning that many power plants, even though they burn coal or some other kind of fossil fuel like natural gas is actually just methane, they can be extremely efficient. Most power plants are more than 40% efficient, meaning that they extract up to 40% of the energy stored in the hydrocarbon bonds inside the fossil fuel. And most of these power plants increase their efficiency by having secondary heat exchangers, meaning that they don't just throw out the excess heat, they actually take it and put it back into the cycle to improve their efficiency. You know what this means? It is actually more efficient for you to take fuel and burn it in a power plant and then use that electricity to charge your vehicle than it is for you to take fuel and put it inside your internal combustion engine vehicle and use it to move around. Blows your mind, right? Another thing that people don't think about is that fuel like petrol or diesel needs to be transported to reach the end user, person who puts it inside the car. Transportation uses more energy, through the trucks, the trains, and the ships that carry the fuel all around the world. Pipeline is a little bit better, but not all petroleum products are transported using pipelines. Pipelines cannot be constructed across oceans, for example. This just adds to the cost and the complexity and the pollution produced by fossil fuels. And let us not even talk about the accidental spillages and wastage that takes place during the transportation of fossil fuels. In the US, for example, methane leaks in the gas supply pipelines has been documented to be a huge contributor to the greenhouse effect that is taking place on our planet. This is because methane is actually a stronger greenhouse gas than CO2, and it's just leaking out of pipes all around the country in the United States. And that is just because they are the only ones who have put the money to do the research to see it. In fact, here is a map of the world showing where the worst methane leaks are taking place. They are all concentrated on regions of the world that produce and mine fossil fuels. Surprise, surprise, right? And we haven't even talked about the problem of certain countries and certain powers controlling the supply chain of fossil fuels. We have all seen what the war taking place in Ukraine has done to the supply of fuel around the world. The prices of petroleum products have skyrocketed, and that is if you can even put your hands on them. They are not available anywhere. All the pumps are dry all over the world. This is a serious problem, and perhaps a wake-up call to many more of us who are thinking of investing in a new vehicle to actually think of investing in an electric vehicle instead of an internal combustion one. And in all my considerations, I am talking about producing electricity using dirty means. But as I have pointed out before in my previous videos, linked in the description, most of the electrical energy that is produced in Africa is actually produced through renewable sources. Therefore, our electric grids in Africa are extremely clean, and we still have a large amount of untapped resources that we still need to exploit. I'm going to make a video about this in the future, by the way, about the geothermal potential of Africa, the solar potential, especially in North Africa, and of course the potential for small modular nuclear reactors that I talked about before that could literally be game-changing in energy production in Africa, making Africa being energy independent. Indeed, electrical production and supply can help many countries in Africa disconnect themselves from the dependency on the supply of petroleum products from certain powers that control the whole supply chain.
I am looking at you, OPEC.
And this will be extremely healthy for our economies. Solar power, wind. I mean, you can put solar panels on your own house and use them to charge your own electric car. Maybe not that quickly, but it's not nothing. And have we forgotten just how terrible fossil fuels can be in not just producing CO2 that is causing global warming and all kinds of cascading effects around the world, but in producing particles that can be carcinogenic, pollution of pristine ecosystems, including water, the water in rivers and oceans, killing hundreds of thousands of species around the world, and fueling wars and dictatorial regimes around the world that have caused massive human suffering. I think you can tell that I pretty much hate fossil fuels, and I think we need to stop using them because clearly they have no future and they pose way more risk than benefit. Oh Brian, there are no electric charging stations around Africa. My own country doesn't have any. What am I going to do? How do you expect me to buy or run an electric vehicle? We all have power to influence our leaders, to change policies and implement policies that will favor renewable sources of energy. And by the way, if you have some money lying around, I think this is an extremely worthy investment to make. Be the guy that opens up the first countrywide distribution of electric vehicle charging stations. I think in the next few years, when the electric vehicle wave finally hits Africa really hard, someone is going to be a millionaire from this idea. I wish I had the money to invest in this. Finally, and I cannot say this enough, Africa needs to take advantage of the resources that we have to make ourselves energy independent. This is the only way we can grow our economy. We need to think about the bigger picture because the populations of Africa, especially the populations of African cities, are growing extremely quickly, and we need fast, clean, and efficient modes of transportation that can hopefully be subsidized by the government to be even free. Many countries around the world have done it, so I believe that Africa can do it too. Oh, and in case you were not convinced, electric vehicles literally do not need any maintenance because they have very few moving parts as compared to an internal combustion engine that has thousands of moving parts that can break, from gearboxes and pistons and all that stuff that I don't know much about. Anyway, if you think there's something that I left out in this discussion, feel free to educate me in the comments below. As usual, you can help this channel by simply subscribing and liking this video so that it can be shown to more people. And of course, you can buy me a coffee and keep the lights on in my studio by simply clicking these two links. Thank you so much. I also have a podcast, the African Scientist Podcast, the only place where African voices speak science. Recently, I had a really interesting guest and we talked about the African Biogenome Project. This is going to change Africa. I have left links in the description on this podcast and all the sources that I used for reference in this video. Thank you so much for watching. This is the African Scientist, science from an African perspective.